The 911 was Porsche. It didn't have to say Porsche. It was 911. End of story.
The 60s saw disruption become the norm. But while many of the era's fads eventually faded away, one iconic disruptor became immortal.
When you think of a sports car, you think of a Porsche 911. I don't know that there's any other car that's been that successful.
911 is that car that we've seen from 1965 through to today. And wherever you see it anywhere in the world, it's known by that shape. There's nothing else like it.
Talk about an icon that's grown from a silhouette to present day. And when you line those cars up and you see where the evolution has come from, you see how much of the DNA and the roots are still vested inside of the car, and what works about that car, and what works from a driving experience, from a performance standpoint, and from an aesthetics standpoint. It's an icon. It's a car that sits separate of all of its competitors.
When the Porsche 901, that's how it was called at the beginning, came out in 1963, people were not sure if it's still a Porsche. Some people just disliked it. But then, when the first journalists drove the car and presented their test reports, people started loving the car.
I think what's so remarkable about this car is the fact that it did follow on from the rear-engine cars that Porsche have produced since day one. And of course, you do have the engine and the transmission behind the center line of the rear wheels.
Very quickly, the 911 became an icon of the Porsche brand. In the meantime, we have 7 generations, and soon we will build the 1 millionth 911, more than 20,000 racing victories. But the most important thing is that I think there's no other sports car which has won so many hearts. If you ask a little boy to draw a sports car, usually something like a 911 comes out. There are many different models of the 911, but a very unique one is here at the Porsche Museum. It's a 911 police car. I met one of these police officers, and he told me that one day they were following a car thief, and at the end he just drove to the right side and stopped and said, "I can't escape from you, you are driving a Porsche."
In the 70s, Porsche updated its own classic, introducing the 911 Turbo. It may not have been the first turbo introduced in the US, but it was the most important.
The Porsche 911 Turbo is really a moment where they're creating a supercar, where they're creating something that's fast and a little dangerous. And that 76 Turbo, again, it's a little monster. It's a little monster that feels familiar, but you have to respect it.
The turbochargers would punch or they would hit or whatever. There was a violence to it. It was really like a turning point for the brand, that they showed that hey, this is what a race car really feels like.
Now all of a sudden they've stuck a turbo and a big wide flare and wider wheels and really pushed the envelope. I was a kid, and you have that 930 poster that so many of us have had. That was like brute, over the top. I mean, that was a flash of some serious car.
Senior prom. I had just picked up my date. I was getting on the 210 freeway going to someone else's house. And I get on the freeway, and the on-ramps in that car were so awesome. And I came up, and there's a CHP right in front of me. I'm only going on the freeway for like 2 miles. I'm like, oh. And I just legged it. I'm coming up on about 50 miles an hour faster behind him. And right when he got past the off-ramp and he couldn't turn, I went, whew, reverse lights at 60 miles an hour. He threw it in reverse, and I came out on the edge of the crest highway, sideways with my date. Got up the highway and around and pulled off. My heart was, it's not just a concept for me. That car was a game changer.
I have a 930 Turbo myself, and when you get that car going on boost, there's no time for texting, there's no time for talking, there's no time for music. That's driving, that's spirited driving, and 930 Turbo, it's hard to argue about something being as engaging as that car.